Welcome to the More Than Just Mowing podcast. I'm your host, Joel Cleaver, and this is the official podcast of Jim's Mowing. If you didn't know it, it's the world's largest gardening franchise with more than 2,000 franchisees in Australia, New Zealand and Canada. And on the podcast show, we interview franchisees, our franchisors who run the regions and manage the franchisees, and also Jim himself. So there's a lot of broad range of content, and we do encourage you, if you are researching more about Jim's Mowing, about what we do, go through those episodes. It will give you a great sense of who we are. So without further delay, here's today's episode. So Kyle, thanks for joining us today for our series of core interviews with franchisees. And basically your core voucher enables you to 2 free nights in any core hotel in the world pretty much. And then basically 50% of dining at various restaurants and a bunch of discounts and drinks and other things as well. So we'll get that to you after the interview. So thanks for joining us today from over in New Zealand. Now, what were you doing prior to Jim's Mowing, Kyle?
I was actually working for a national healthcare organisation. They ran physiotherapy and also had a fitness arm of that business, and I was the national fitness manager for them.
So what prompted the change?
I think I'd been thinking about doing my own thing for a long time, and I was actually heading down a different path. But when COVID hit and lockdowns hit, my role had been about serving and looking after people, and all of a sudden I couldn't do that the way that I was used to doing. And so I started searching for something where I could still provide service, but it was a little bit more autonomous in what I was doing. And it struck me that actually lawn care might be the way to go, because I could do that autonomously and still provide a really good service.
And what was it about Jim's Mowing that you liked? Or I presume you would have researched a lot of other things as well. So what was it about the Jim's Mowing franchise that interested you?
Yeah, actually, I've been living before 2020. I've been living in Melbourne for a few years. And so I was aware of the brand then, and actually had I'd done some investigation into the brand while I was there. But we made the decision to come back to New Zealand. So it was still in the back of my mind. And so when I started looking at opportunities again, I think going with a franchise like Jim's, I knew the name, I knew the brand, and I knew that I could probably build up a business really quickly with that branding behind me.
And how was the training for yourself?
Yeah, it was really good. I was lucky enough to not only attend the online version of the franchisee training that was held in Melbourne, but I also got to work with some really good guys here in the Wellington area. So I spent a week with 2 different franchisees, and that was really good. It kind of geared me for what was coming, and also just helped me just organise what I was doing when I started by myself.
Because you got a really good customer service rating. I have a look before jumping on. And the reason why I say is because most people who did, because obviously during COVID and stuff, there was an online training component where people couldn't do training in person. Jim loves training in person. He doesn't really like the online component. But I did find that actually the people who did the online training, the overall customer service rating on average tend to be less, because on the online thing, you've got to pay attention for 8 hours or whatever it is. It can be very, very hard. And some people just, didn't pay attention or walked or whatever it is, right? So how have you, because it's obviously, it probably is a little bit harder almost to get a really good customer service rating once you've done the online training. So how did you manage to keep such a good stands in your business?
I think it just comes from my previous experience, having worked, I started in customer service. You would know the brand that's Smith Electronics. So I worked for them for a number of years, and it was all about customer service. And then through my whole career, it has been customer service all the way. So it's really just being able to identify what people want and then provide that service, and being really clear about what they want. So I'm providing what they want. I think that helps a lot. And just good communication, just letting them know when I'll be there. And that starts from the face-to-face when they're showing me the work that they have. I think that goes a long way towards it.
And what type of services do you offer in your business?
I offer the whole gamut, actually, so probably a little bit more. But lawn mowing is the main part of it. But I do gutter clearing, I do garden maintenance, I do scarifying, dethatching, coring, all those sorts of things. I recently, about a year ago now, took my agricide application certificate so I can provide pest control as well as herbicide control and those sorts of things. So quite a bit.
Yeah, well, what services, you've mentioned a few services that I don't hear many of the guys do here in Aussies talk about scarification and that agricide sort of matrix. Can you just tell us a little bit more detail about that? I find that quite interesting.
Yeah, sure. So what I do for my customers when I first start off with them, depending on what they want, some people just want mowing and that's completely fine. But some people are looking to get their lawns in really good condition. So I actually, when I do my original quote, I'll quote for that regular mowing, but I'll also quote all the other things as well. So I'll tell them about how coring really opens up the ground and lets the grass breathe, and gives them a healthy lawn. And scarifying does the same thing as well. I tell them about how things like pest control could help in their particular situation. And then once they have that pricing, then they're aware of those services, and some people go with it straight away. So I tell them that, on a regular basis, this is when you should do it. And I also do a monthly newsletter. And in that monthly newsletter, I tell them, actually, we're just heading into spring. So this is the perfect time. If you're thinking about getting your lawn in really good condition, then you should be looking at getting it scarified and those sorts of things. So that's really how those additional services.
Glad you do a monthly newsletter. This is something that more franchisees probably should do. So do you want to talk about what software do you use for your monthly newsletter and how much information are you putting in there?
So basically I use Jim's Jobs which is the platform that we use it's our CRM basically. So I use that for the emailing portion of it. And basically what I have myself is I've made up a calendar for New Zealand or the conditions in my local area as to when the seasons are for particular services. And so when I'm doing my newsletter, I'll have a look. I'm doing dual newsletter, and then I will pick out the components from that calendar that I have and feed that into my newsletter. So it's a little bit manual, but that does mean that it can be a little bit more personal as well, rather than having something automated.
Are you including images in there, or are you putting set prices, or what are you doing for that?
Yeah, so I do images. So often I take a lot of before and after photos of work that I've done, and I include those. So, if your lawn's looking like this and you want it to look like this, then this is the process to get there.
Now, how much work do you think that generates for you?
It's actually, I find that I get a lot of additional work for the clients that I have. Obviously, I'm not sending it out to clients that I don't have. And so I would say on a yearly basis, it's probably generates an extra 10 to 15% income.
And when you compare that to the actual time you're putting in, that's a pretty good ROI what you're doing.
The return on investment for sending out an email, 100% is worthwhile.
No, it's great. I'm glad you said that, and we're certainly trying to encourage franchisees and even our franchisors here to do a lot more of it. Because as you said, they're your customers. They know you've got a relationship. You're not emailing someone out of the blue. It's and it's a good prompting reminder. And as you said, that's really smart. You've got the seasonal calendar, what services are needed in those seasons. You can have that prepared, ready to go. I'm sure there are franchisees who do it, but I don't think there's enough in the group who do what you've done. That's really good.
It is. It's just such a small investment of time to get, a return. And I think we want to optimize your time. I mean, quite honestly, if you're going to mow a lawn, then to provide the service of planting a herbicide or something like that for an extra 10 minutes of work, again, return on that's really worthwhile.
That's great. And with your business as well, how big is your business currently? How many customers do you currently serve?
So I have 70 customers on a regular basis, and then I have a number of people who just contact me for one-off services every now and then. But I have to say that probably 20% of my business is made up of commercial customers. So there are a number of franchisees that will have bigger databases of mine or client bases, but those commercial properties actually, for return on visits, make up the great majority of my income.
Now, have those commercial customers come from leads, or has it been something that you got on source yourself, or how have you got those customers?
Yeah, so originally my first commercial customers is my biggest one, came from my previous role as an operations manager for a local council. So I reached out to them basically. I went back through those old contacts and said, hey, I'm providing them services. I know your business, and I'm sure I can help out. And so I got quite a good return on that. And then from there, it's just allowed me to be introduced to other commercials as well. And then when leads come through, they do come through from commercial operators, just letting them know that actually I specialize in commercial work, makes them feel at ease with me being able to meet their needs.
It's great. Now, how have you enjoyed the business overall? Because did you start in 2022, was it, or?
It's a year and a half in, so 23, so 22, beginning of 22.
Yeah, so just over a year and a half. How have you found the business? Those first 12 months is generally the hardest in business. So how have you found it?
Yeah, so I think the biggest learning curve is the body adjusts to work pretty quickly. After a month, you get to going back to month, aching and we get the Epsom salts out and throw them in the bath and just recovering. But once that part of it's come, I think the hardest part probably is just trying to get your financials right. And so, just being able to balance your costs with your income, making sure that you're pricing right, and then making sure that you get to the point where you're actually paying yourself an income as well out of it. That's probably been the biggest learning curve in the first year. But having got through that first year, the projections for this year look really good. And I'm at the point now where I'm thinking about bringing on employees. I haven't intended to do that. I intended to stay as a sole trader, but actually the business is growing really well.
That's great. And let's talk about quoting, because quoting tends to be a big problem for a lot of franchisees. It's not a problem, but it's something where it can trip a few people up early on and they get used to it eventually. But do you want to talk about quoting from your experience in regards to maybe some advice around that?
Yeah. So when I started, I guess you have in your mind about what your time is worth. And so I would go into a property and I actually physically would talk to the client, and then I'd say to them, thank you so much. Is it all right if I just spend some time looking around, make sure I get the job right? And I would physically walk the area that I would need to line trim so that I got an idea of, well, it's going to take me this long to line trim, so it'll take me this long to mow. So my quoting process was probably a little bit slow in the beginning, but I just wanted to make sure I got it right. I got a good understanding of how long I'd be spending at properties, and so that's how I quoted. But I have found that actually my time was worth more than when I first started in terms of what I thought. So that's changed as well around making sure that I was getting the costs right. But yeah, quoting, I would always say to people, if you're doing quoting, they just walk in and the client points out everything and you just go, I kind of think that's going to be this much. Just taking the time to say, hey, that's fantastic. Is it all right if I look around? And spend some time really getting together the numbers so that you can go back to them and provide them with a quote. And the good thing about using Jim's Jobs is being able to quote straight off the app as well. So I would wander around and I'd just pop in some notes as I was going around. And as I said to you, I'd also put in those extras. They actually could do with some weed spraying or things like that as well. And then I'd finish up, knock on the door and just say, just emailed that quote to you. This is what it's worth. When I was starting, I had time on my hands, so I'd just say to them, are you happy with that? Would you like me to take care of the money now? Otherwise, I would just say to them, you've got the details here. I'll follow up with you in a couple of days to see where you're at.
Yeah, it's a good bit of simple advice. Is literally, as you said, walking the property up and down and then doing the calculation in your head. I haven't heard anyone tell me that yet, but that's a really good way to look at it. You're right. Some people get there really keen and just sort of want to do it as quick as possible. But yeah, as you said, taking that time to do that and going through your head and walking it and doing your calculations and adding those extras in, it might take you longer there, but that ROI in regards to adding those extras that you might not have got is going to be far more beneficial for you.
That's what I've found.
Yeah, that's great. And what about the equipment in your business? What brands do you like to use? What types of gear do you have?
I use Husqvarna line trimmer. I've been using the Ego battery platform for just my hedge trimmers and blower. And then mowers, I've got a Honda HRX 217 and I've got a mix actually. I've got a Toro 30-inch mower. I've got a World Lawn 28-inch walk behind mower, and I've got a Wright 32-inch stand-on mower. And the reason for that is just because of the commercial part of it, the big properties. Sometimes the stand is too heavy for wet conditions, and so having a really good walk behind mower makes a big difference. And then just having a mower like the Honda, which has the versatility of being able to mulch as well in dry conditions. Mulching is a really good way to go. So really getting through properties quickly and also looking after the lawns, mixing it. Mulching and catching is what I do. So if I mulch one time, then I'll catch next time, just so I'm not leaving one too much. But yeah, I do find that the Husqvarna line trimmers are really good for me, but I've been surprised at how reliable the Ego stuff has been as well.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. We have we have a very similar thing with franchisees here as well. They do the mix. They'll have the Ego or another battery powered brand line trimmer or edge trimmer, just because it's lighter and it'll save their wrist a little bit, and then they'll have the petrol. A lot of people still use the Honda and stuff, even though Jim's pushing people to do the battery. You just can't beat that Honda and how tough and how powerful that thing is.
Yeah, 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 100%. No.
Now with Wellington, so what prompted the move back home, if you don't mind me asking? Because Wellington's a great place. I went there for some filming, and I actually, personally myself, I could see myself living in a Wellington. I liked Wellington, 200,000 people, good number, and it's got a really good variety of environments and scenes and stuff. When I was there, I remember.
We originally moved over there. Actually, my wife and her career path, just an opportunity came up in Australia, and she was really keen to pursue that, just to broaden her widths of ability, I guess. And so it was a move for her professional career. And after a few years, we loved it there. We absolutely loved it there. But we still had our home back here, and we hadn't sold off our property and things. And we were caught in between whether we were going to do that and stay in Melbourne or move back. So we decided to make the move back. Yeah, so it was really, my wife had got everything that she wanted out of the few years there, and she got another job offer back here as well. And quite honestly, the move over there, I went over there with no job, left a really good job with no job, and came back to New Zealand with no job. But I was lucky enough to find good employment both ways. But yeah, it was just we've got a couple of children as well, so at the time it was really good in terms of schooling for them as well, so not too big a disruption. So that was the main reason our home and everything was here, and it was either make our lives in Melbourne or make our lives back in New Zealand. So, but we miss Melbourne. We loved it.
Yeah. I was going to say, how does the business work? How do you work around your family for business? Are you doing the drop off of the school? Are you doing the pickup, or how are you working?
If I turn to my right, I can see the primary school across.
Oh, really? Oh, like right.
So that was it's a big benefit. And my kids are big enough to get going, but we alternate turns. So my wife's lucky enough to work a couple of days from home, and then I'll do the rest of the mornings. I'll just read a little bit later, and I might come home a little bit. But yeah, you do. It's a mix of, I'll do some long days to really get through a good run of my properties for the week, and then just have a couple of shorter days as well.
Now, are you happy with the level of income you're making as well, with what you're doing at the moment?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, cost of living's gone up, so I'd like more. And that's why I'm actually looking at the opportunity to just grow the business with another person. I've been lucky enough to have a couple of good subcontractors, and that's been a good way to keep the income up, where I take care of everything. I get the acquire the clients and things, and they do the mows, and then I just take a percentage of that, and they just don't have to worry about the client money to it. They just look after the client property. So that's been one way to up the income. But as I said, looking to take on my own staff rather than subcontractors, well, I would see spring as when I want to make that money, to be honest.
Yeah, I couldn't believe how expensive the property was there as well. Like, I knew New Zealand was expensive as well, but in Wellington, I couldn't believe it. I remember I was talking to some franchisees over there, and the prices were comparable to back here. I just couldn't. Yeah, it's a very expensive place as well. So I feel for you.
Yeah. Well, when you're living in a place, you think things are expensive. I was living in Essendon, and oh boy, whose properties are expensive. Then I came home, was like, wow, I can't believe it. Even in the time that we were over there, the value of our property here in New Zealand had grown so much, we were blown away. So
yeah, and I couldn't believe it. But I could see why Wellington. I didn't realize how much of a nice place it was. Like, it's got a little bit of everything. Like, it had a nice the wharf area there and all that sort of stuff, and it had really nice the government buildings and stuff, that sort of vibe there, and then really, really clean city, and then you got the tram car and stuff up to there. It's a really nice view. Like, it's a really, really nice part of the world, so you can't go wrong going between Melbourne or Wellington.
No, well, I think they're quite similar cities. I think Wellington's probably a smaller version of Melbourne, and I think that's why we loved it so much, the cafe culture and the mix of people.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's exactly right. That's what I felt when I was there. And when we're driving out to Lower Hutt, that sort of area, to film with some franchisees, and that just drive itself was really beautiful. It was just coming in, and really, 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 really great city. So you can't go wrong between there or Wellington. But I was going to say as well, with so with your business and being in it for now, what sort of advice would you give yourself back? When you were just was there some things you'd tell yourself maybe if you had to do it again, to maybe help you along?
Yeah, I think, as I was saying, the hardest learning curve, or the biggest learning curve, was actually just getting the costing right for things. I know a lot of, when you're starting up as a sole trader, your main concern is about spending more money on things that you don't think you need. But actually, I would have set up with an accountant earlier than I had, and just talking through how to get the costing right in terms of income and what you were spending, so that, if whatever accounting package that you're using, you can actually see what those expenses are. And I think that helps with your costing of jobs overall. I think I've become smarter just because I know what it costs me per acquisition and per job. How much fuel I'm using on a slice and things. I hadn't really worried about that before. But when I started working with an accountant, it all became much clearer to me. So I think that's what I would do. I would advise that even if you took the time to talk to an accountant to see if it was the right fit for you, that would be one of my first moves if I was going to invest. You're essentially investing yourself and your money into a new business. So why not get really good advice?
It's a great bit of advice, Kyle, because we have people keeping in Australia, and then they always tell me that the person will start for 6 months, and then after 6 months they'll come to them, and then it's a lot more work for them as opposed to just doing it right from the start, and it's like a cup of coffee a day in terms of the cost. So that's a really good bit of advice, and a lot of people do try to do it themselves, but as you said, you've got so many things you've got to try and manage. You're new, you're doing customers, you've got to worry about equipment breaking down or something like that, and then you've got the financial side of it. That's something where you're just paying to sort of get out of the way.
Even silly things like using subcontractors. Some people say, "Oh, I'll just pay them some cash or whatever to get the job done," right? But actually, if you're set up properly, having subcontractors on your books, and even if they were doing the job, you priced at $250, and they said, "No, I'd only do it for $250." Think, "Oh, you're not making any money out of it." But actually, there's a claim on expenses there as well, so that offsets each cost. So being able to run things through the books with somebody who can guide you really makes a difference to the income of the business, the profitability of the business.
Absolutely, and you can't expect yourself to know everything. You've got to take on everything as a new business owner, and you just can't know everything, and then it can lead to a lot of pressure, and some people might get a bit, almost pride and use their pride so much in a way, I should know this stuff, and there's nothing wrong with asking for help, and I think that's a really good bit of advice there as well. I'll leave you there, Kyle, in regards to this. So thank you for joining us today as well. We'll get this a call voucher to you and you and the wife. Have a couple of nights at any Newport hotel. I'm sure there's some nice stuff there, or if you go travel, you'll be able to use it. It's worth around $600, $700. So that's our gift from us to you. And it's great to hear someone who's done the online training do so well in customer service and enjoying it. It's really great to hear. So thank you. No worries, Kyle. Thanks, mate. No worries. See you, mate. Thank you for listening to the episode of the More Than Just Mowing podcast by Jim's Mowing. If you do need help with your local gardening expert, please give us a call on 131 546 for Australia, 0800 454 654 for New Zealand, or head to jimsmowing.com.au or jimsmowing.co.nz. If you liked what you heard, please make sure to leave us a review as well, wherever you consume your podcast. We appreciate your support. And until next episode, we hope you have a great week.